Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. All praise is due to Allah, and may His peace and blessings be upon His last messenger Muhammad, and upon all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. We welcome you once again, dear viewers, to another episode on the Hereafter. Another in a series of Islamic programs presented to you by Sharjah Satellite Television from Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. We've been talking about the situation of the disbelievers on the Day of Judgment. And we talked about some of the disgrace and degradation that they would go through. And we started now looking at the voiding of their deeds. That these people, the disbelievers, the criminals, the oppressors, the wrongdoers, on the Day of Judgment, their deeds will be voided. They'll be wiped out, useless. There'll be nothing. And we talked last time, we were discussing about the money that the wrongdoers, the money that the people spend. We mentioned the ayat of Quran in which Allah says, what they spend in the life of this world is like that of a wind containing frost, which strikes the harvest of a people who have wronged themselves and destroys it. And Allah has not wronged them, but they wrong themselves. This is from chapter 3, verse 117 of Quran. So these people, the wrongdoers, they're spending money, but spending it in a wrong way. Spending it to do evil, spending it to commit sin, spending it for the wrong reasons, for the wrong outcomes or what have you. And so Allah is giving this analogy, that the money they spend, it is like a frost. The likeness of what they spend, it's like a very cold wind, which blows over the harvest so that they lose all of their harvest. It would destroy it. In other words, a frostbite. A very cold wind that destroys the plants. They plowed the earth. These people, they plowed the earth, they planted the seeds, they took care of it, and they nourished it until the plants grew up. And then it's time to take the fruits, it's time to harvest, and then this wind is sent, and these plants and this harvest, the wind is sent on it, this cold wind, and it destroys everything. And so the next day they go to it, they go to their crops, what have you, and they want to go and harvest their fruits. And when they are in great need, now they're in need of their fruits, they need it, they need this harvest. At a time when they're in need, they go to get it, and they find nothing. It's all been destroyed. So this money that these people, that they spend now for the sake of achieving objectives, but on the Day of Judgment, it will be wasted, and they will not find anything. When they need something, when they need these deeds, at the time of harvesting now, when the person will need their deeds, he's going to his harvest to collect this money that they spend, it's like a cold frost, and it will destroy everything. So they have nothing. On the day they need it most, they will go to collect their deeds, and there's nothing there. It's been destroyed. And Allah says that it is not Allah who has wronged them. Allah did not wrong them, but they wronged themselves. When we talk about these ayah that say that their deeds are useless, a person, they might wonder, isn't Allah just? Isn't Allah going to reward these people according to their deeds? Isn't Allah just? He's adl, He's just. Allah, in order to clarify in our minds, in order to clarify this, Allah is saying that Allah did not wrong them. Yes, Allah is just. Allah did not wrong them. But they wronged themselves. Their deeds have been voided. And it wasn't Allah who wronged them. Allah is not being unjust by voiding these deeds. But they wronged themselves. People have wronged themselves. It is not Allah. Allah will hold us accountable for our deeds. And anything that we suffer because of our deeds, it is not Allah who is wronging us, it is us who have wronged ourselves. Allah is just. There is no changing that. Allah is not going to unjustly void somebody's deeds. Allah is not wronging us, but it is ourselves, we are wronging ourselves if we suffer from this. It is not Allah. A third analogy that is given to the deeds of the disbelievers, Allah says, the example of those who disbelieve in their Lord is that their deeds are like ashes which the wind blows forcefully on a stormy day. They are unable to keep from what they earned a single thing. And that is extreme error. This is from chapter 14, verse 18. So Allah is giving us another analogy of the deeds of the disbelievers, that it is ashes. These deeds of the disbelievers, they're like ashes. So you can imagine, you have a mountain of ashes, a huge amount of ashes, and that's your deeds. The deeds that you've done in this life, imagine them as if they're a huge mountain of ashes. And it appears to be huge. It is a big mountain, a huge mountain of ashes. You've done a lot of acts, a lot of deeds. And now these deeds are appearing in front of you as ashes. And you go, you have this huge mountain, and so you go there to collect your reward for these deeds. And a very violent, very strong wind comes and blows away all of those ashes right in front of your eyes. You've done all of these deeds. Imagine these deeds that you've done throughout your life are ashes, and you have a huge mountain of deeds and a huge mountain of ashes. You go to collect your reward for these deeds, and a strong and violent wind comes along and blows away all of these ashes right in front of your eyes. So imagine you're trying to hold on to ashes. And what can you hold? The wind now is blowing these ashes around. You're trying to hold on to ashes. You're trying to hold on to your deeds. But they're like ashes. What can you hold on to? You can hold on to nothing. It's nothing. It will be nothing, and there is no substance to any deeds that are done not for the sake of Allah. Anything that is not done for the sake of Allah, any deed that is not done for the sake of Allah, there is no substance to those deeds. Even if a person has a huge mountain of deeds. A good deed, they can be good deeds. They're not necessarily bad deeds or evil deeds. But those deeds were not done for the sake of Allah. They were done for worldly gain, they were done for show, they were done for popularity, they were done to acquire this, to do this, to get that, to satisfy this person or what have you. They were done for every reason you can imagine except for the sake of Allah. So no matter how many deeds, how good the deeds, if they're not done for the sake of Allah, they have no substance, they are not accepted. That is why, and we look at the wonderful and the eloquent illustrations of Qur'an. Ashes are a lot. The person has a huge mountain of it, but it is nothing. It is worthless. Why? Because of one of two reasons. One, these deeds are missing the requirement of ikhlas, the requirement of sincerity. Or two, they are missing the requirement of following the Prophet, may God's peace and blessings be upon him. For any deed to be acceptable, any deed that we are performing, and this is a very important point, for any deed to be accepted, it has to fulfill two requirements. First, it has to be done with ikhlas. It has to fulfill these both requirements, otherwise it is not acceptable. And so firstly, the deed has to be done with ikhlas. It has to be done with sincerity. You do it sincerely for the sake of Allah alone. The deed you're performing, the deeds that you're doing it for the sake of Allah alone, not for anyone else. If you do a good thing, if you do a good deed, but you're doing it for someone or for something other than Allah, then justice says that you shouldn't expect Allah to reward you for it. This is, if you work for somebody, if you're hired by one person to do something, and you're doing this work, but you're doing the work now for somebody else. If you're working for company A, you don't go to company B to be paid. You have to do your work for company A. If you do it for A, then that company will pay you. But if you go to another company expecting your reward for doing the work for a different company, they're not going to pay you. This is justice. Justice tells you that if you're doing it for something other than Allah, that you shouldn't expect Allah to reward you for it. If we're doing our deeds, performing our deeds for anything, anybody or anything other than Allah, we shouldn't expect Allah to reward us for those deeds. If you didn't do it for Allah to start with, then how can you expect or how can you want Allah to reward you for it. And so that is exactly what will happen on the Day of Judgment. Allah will tell the people, on the Day of Judgment, Allah will tell the people that whoever used to worship the idols, go to the idols and let them reward you. And whoever used to worship human beings, go to the human beings and let them reward you. And whoever used to worship angels, go to the angels and let them reward you. And whoever used to worship me, I will reward you. So Allah is telling the people, whoever you used to worship, go to them. Or whatever object or whatever thing that you used to worship, whether it was the sun, a rock, a tree, or what have you, go to it and ask it for your reward. But for those who used to worship me, I will reward you. Allah is saying, for those people who used to worship Him, He will reward them. But the people, anything else that you used to worship, anything else that you used to do, your deeds for the sake of anything else, go to that person or go to that object, that thing, what have you, and ask for your reward. But the people who did it with ikhlas, who did their deeds with sincerity, who did it for the sake of Allah, those people who worshipped Allah, Allah says He will reward you. So these deeds of these people, of the disbelievers, are missing one of these two requirements. Either they're not done with ikhlas, or they weren't done according to the way shown by the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him. This second requirement is following the Prophet, may God's peace and blessings be upon him. You have to do it the right way. This is the second requirement. You could be doing something with ikhlas, but you're not doing it the correct way. You're not doing it in accordance with the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him. So you do it the right way. The act has to be done the right way, with ikhlas, and it has to be done in the correct manner. You cannot invent the way that you want to worship Allah. You cannot make up the way that you want to worship Allah. You can't just make it up or invent it or do whatever you feel is best, or whatever works out best for you. You have to do it the way that pleases Allah, because Allah knows better than you. We cannot just do things and do deeds and good deeds and worship Allah the way that we feel is best, or the way that we feel that we want to do it, or the way is most comfortable for us. We have to do it the way that pleases Allah, because Allah knows better than us. Therefore, we leave it up to Allah to show us the way to worship Him. As the one who is asking us to worship Him, then you need to do it Allah's way, not your own way. Allah is asking us to worship Him. Allah is the one asking us to worship Him, so we have to do it Allah's way. We don't do it our own way. Allah gives another analogy. In the Quran He says, "And we will regard what they have done of deeds and make them as dust dispersed." Allah is saying that we will regard, that Allah will regard what the people, what the disbelievers, what they have done of deeds, and make them as dust dispersed. This is from chapter 25, verse 23. So Allah's, the Arabic word is haba. Allah is saying we made it haba. And Ali ibn Abi Talib, when he described this word, which is translated as dust, haba, he described it saying that if you're in a dark room, imagine if you're sitting in a dark room and there's a small window and there's some light shining through that window, and you can see there's like you see this beam of light shining through the window. You're sitting in a very dark room, and in that beam of light there's some very small particles. You see very small particles floating in that light. You can see these particles floating there in the air. Those small particles that are floating in the air that you see in this beam of light, this is what is called haba. And this is what is this word. This is what is meant by it, and this is translated into English as dust, dispersed. You can see it, especially if you're in a dark room. Most of us have probably seen this at one time or another in our life. You're sitting in a dark room or in a semi-dark room, and there's a ray of light coming through, and you see these small particles of dust floating in the air. That is haba. So all of these deeds that these people were doing, all of these deeds that the disbelievers, that the wrongdoers that they were doing, are going to be like this dust, these fine particles floating that we see in the ray of light. They will be scattered. Manthura. In the Arabic it's saying manthura. This is dust dispersed or scattered. So, like you see these small particles floating and it's scattered. It's all over the place. This is their deeds on the Day of Judgment. So you try to collect your deeds. You will try to go and collect your deeds, and they're scattering in the air. First of all, there are these small, fine particles floating in the air all over, and they're scattering in the air. What will you be able to collect from it? So it's all gone. There's nothing that you will get, that the people will get from their deeds. Allah says, say, shall we inform you of the greatest losers as to their deeds? Those whose effort is lost in worldly life, while they think that they are doing well in work. Those are the ones who disbelieve in the verses of their Lord and in their meeting Him. So their deeds have become worthless, and we will not assign to them on the day of resurrection any weight. This is from chapter 18, verses 103 to 105. So Allah is telling us about the greatest losers. Those people who, they think they're doing good. In this worldly life, they think that they're doing good. They think that their deeds are good. But on the Day of Judgment, these deeds have become worthless. They think they're doing good when in fact they're doing wrong, they're doing bad. And their deeds have become worthless, and Allah will not give them any weight on the Day of Judgment. They're worthless. And so, who is the greatest loser? We see from this ayat, Islam gives us definitions of concepts. We have a definition of the concept of happiness. We have a definition of the concept, the Islamic definition of the concept of loss, and the Islamic definition of the concept of good, of the concept of bad, and what have you. So, because sometimes we may think that happiness is something different. We may think that that loss is something different. Many times, whenever if you tell somebody, I lost something, then your mind would go to losing a game or losing in business. If you lost something, you're thinking, I lost some money, or I lost a competition, I lost something, a loss, losing money. But this isn't the Islamic definition of loss. Allah is telling us here what is the greatest loss. In this ayat, Allah is telling us about the greatest loss, the greatest losers. You want to know what is the greatest loss? Allah is telling us that the greatest losers are the ones who wasted their time in this world. Those people who wasted their efforts, who wasted their time, they wasted their energy in this world, thinking that they were doing good. They were thinking that they were doing good. They were wasting their time in this world, thinking that they were doing good. That is the greatest loss. Because they spent their lifetime thinking that they were doing good, but it's all worthless. So these are the people who will be the greatest losers. So Allah says that these are the ones that disbelieved in the signs of Allah, the verses of Allah, and disbelieved in meeting with Allah. And so Allah will void these deeds, will cancel these deeds, and He will not give them any weight. These are the greatest losers, as Allah has explained in Quran. With that, dear viewers, we'd like to end for this episode. We hope that you have enjoyed it, and hope that you will continue to join us in the future. Until the next time, we bid you all farewell. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.